Welcome to Austin Life Empowered Live. I am Louis Brantmeyer, CEO and founder of Austin Life Empowered, and this is one of our amazing presenters,
Dr. HazelGrace Yates. I am a clinical sexologist here to end global sexual shame, and I'm so excited about coming to Austin November 5th. We have a full day, and I'm one of the 5 presenters
from our Austin Life Empowered Workshop Series 4. We at Ale, as we like to call ourselves, even though few of us drink, which makes it ironic, are committed to creating live events and workshops that equip you with the tools and technologies to thrive in all areas of life, including sexuality. So, as luck would have it, we are talking about sex today, which is very exciting and enjoyable. I'm going to let HazelGrace start us off.
Yeah. So the workshop that I'm going to be leading in Austin is called Break Through the 7 Barriers to Your Sexually Empowered Life. And Louis and I just wanted to talk about, I know at least it's my favorite thing to talk about, sex. And in particular, where we want to start this conversation off is how has our sexual empowerment and how has our sexual wellness impacted our life in particular? So I want to pass over to you, Louis, and ask you that question. In what other areas of your life do you feel have been boosted by having confidence in the realm of sexuality?
Well, great question. I would say that started off socially awkward, anxious, and diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which puts me on the autism spectrum. And I moved to Austin to completely transform myself into an extrovert. And so started off with Asperger's. Now I'm a coach, a public speaker, and a salesman. And in the interim, what led me from point A to point B was the desire to be sexually empowered, was the desire to have more sex, to have better sex, to have sex more often with more partners. Now, there's a lot of distinguishing of stories that took place between that desire beginning to get satisfied to now, where I realized that I was having sex because of ideas like, oh, I'm not having as much sex as my ex-girlfriend, and having sex is the only place I get to feel loved and accepted. And so that's why, unconsciously, that's why I was seeking it. And now it's more of a empowerment by virtue of being in control to some extent over sexuality. Like my experience is when I harness and circulate and transmute sexual energy in my body, I'm more focused. It's easier to concentrate. It's easier to stay motivated. I'm more turned on, which feels really good to be turned on by a beautiful woman or a sexual fantasy or a sexual thought. So that's a whole realm of, and I'd say empowerment is probably relative, right? Empowerment is relative to where you started, where you're committed to getting, what you've been through along the way. Whenever I felt, so this is after I did the landmark advanced course, and my possibility there was the possibility of being Casanova. So whenever I felt disempowered, it was like a magic spell. And you know how landmark works. You use words in a way that transforms consciousness and shifts your experience of your way of being. So I would say right now, from nothing, who I am is the possibility of being Casanova. And my mind would shift. And then my action usually would be to approach a beautiful woman and start a conversation. And that would reinscribe my sense of my own power to create new connections and to empower myself. So it's interesting that you should ask, how has experience in sexuality empowered me in my whole life? It gave me a sense of the ability to make things happen, to accomplish things, and difficult things. And so, yeah, that kind of followed me into my career as account executive and salesman for Brain Juice, and then especially as coach and philosophy teacher for a while, being with people, being public with people, being grounded in sexual energy
Mm.
is especially empowering. So yeah, good answers. Answers that you were looking for.
Well, whatever your answer was, it was the answer I was looking for, actually.
Right.
Yes, of course.
Just
Brilliant.
answering the right question. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've told my story many a times, and for me, when I think back about my life before my sexual healing and before my sexual empowerment, I just look back thinking I didn't get to live the whole human experience.
Yes. I know exactly
like
what that feels like.
This whole part of me being a human was completely turned off. There was a closet. I didn't know that I had the chance to open the door and see what was in there. And for me specifically, the areas that I notice that I have a lot of strength in now in my life ubiquitously, not just in the bedroom, is being able to ask for what I want and being able to have the confidence to ask anyone for what I want, whether it's in the bedroom or not. My capacity to receive pleasure helps me in my everyday life receive from other people as well. And the other thing too is really giving myself permission. It's almost like the more I allow myself to feel pleasure, it's like the more I'm actually allowed to dream big in my life and actually kind of claim the things that I desire in my life. And I just remember, I also remember once I went through my sexual empowerment phase, I was like giving myself permission to feel my sex and to feel my sexy in everyday life. And it just feels more fun that I can like walk through the grocery store and be like, yes, I'm a goddess sexual being and it's beautiful. And there's a sexy music on in the grocery store and I want to have fun in my body as I'm grocery shopping. And like, so pretty much just more fun.
Yeah. It's funny, as you say that, like, I'm curious, or I have a curiosity as to how your sexual desires have evolved from the period when you were in like shame or lockdown, broken off from it, to sexually empowered. And I ask also because I've got a good answer, but I definitely want to hear yours first.
I like the transparency there. I think for me, before my sexual empowerment liberation phase, I didn't even know what the choices and the options were. It's like I thought the only choices was vanilla. So it was literally just a very, very, very small, limited amount of the choices of my desires. And the more that I'm exposing myself to what's possible in the realm of sexuality, then it's like the more varied desires come about. Something that, for example, something I've been getting into the last couple of years is power dynamic and kink. And I'm noticing that if you would have told me this 10 years ago about myself, Lewis, I've been like, you're crazy. I love being submissive and giving over the trust and the control to someone who actually trusts. It's just like opened up these whole new areas of my life, and it feels really healing to be able to explore these parts of myself and of sexuality that I didn't even know existed, that I didn't know that I desired until I gave myself permission to look and see what else is out there. So that's how it's impacted some of my desires. How about you?
Clever segue. I find that the more sex I had, the more that I would want to have, and the more partners I had, the more I wanted to have. Until I had an experience with some women in Amsterdam. And, well, these women were paid. And so I was like, I actually feel some like either shame or discomfort as I say that. Like, it was a complete alienation of the physical from the emotional in sexuality. And so in the past year, it's been a real exploration of either emotional sexuality or asexuality, or trying to like just like control it, which maybe is unwise. I'm not sure. Felt the most powerful I've ever felt in my life for those 3 months, when there was no orgasm, no sex, no relationships, no dating,
You
no
felt
Tinder.
more alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, at that point, I was coming from the context of, okay, you'll have to follow me through this. It goes all the way back to the earliest seduction stuff I studied, which was, he called it, and that is based on a handle of some guy on the internet, Gunwitch method. Gunwitch. Okay. I don't remember his real name, but he talked about how if you're having sex, the more sex you have, the more women can register this, the more they can feel the sexual energy and the comfort from you, and the easier it is to have more sex. I examined myself over the years, and I found that after I had sex, there was a polarization that happened. It was like a turning on of a magnet. So long as I didn't depolarize by having an orgasm, apart from a woman, then I noticed that I was more magnetic. I was more attractive. It was easier to get turned on. And so part of what was going on for those 3 months when I had no sex and all of this was I was holding that. I was like deathly afraid that I wouldn't be as attractive if I didn't hold my sexual energy. So that was kind of like sexuality under threat. So I'm open to separate threads, getting really authentic. So the first one, isolation of emotions versus like physicality. This is after years of just being obsessed with the physical. Like, ooh, I want more women, more sex, more often. And eventually, like, I noticed in myself that all of those times, often, if not almost all of them, I would have sex, and then I would open up and invest emotionally, and they wouldn't, because it was framed as casual sex. And I looked at that and I was like, why am I doing that? Well, it's because what I really most want is not just emotional connection, but like the full depth of the connection. So I gave myself that. Yeah. And I had a relationship where it was the depth of the emotional intimacy that yielded incredible turn on, and that yielded passionate, magnetized, animalistic, impulsive, fun sex. And that was there, and that was like the backbone of that relationship was just the sex, really, mostly. There was so much other resonance, but eventually I came that I felt fuzzy, incoherent, depleted, de-energized after sex with her. And I felt like pulled off course. And so I had to stop because it just didn't serve me as good as it was. And so now I'm in the space of like, yeah, I still have desires for different shapes and sizes and colors and races of women, but like there's a wariness, there's a cautiousness. And then I read The Truth 3 times. So that was like a meteorite to my self-relating to my own sexual desires. Was like Neil distinguishes for himself that his desire.
Author of The Truth.
Yes, Neil Strauss. Yeah, I talk about him like he's my friend Neil. I've only read those books enough times to have him in my head. He distinguishes that eventually, as he does all this therapy to peel back the layers and to complete with his parents, childhood wounds and traumas, that what he thought were authentic sexual desires for multiple partners were actually just his desire for avoidance of intimacy disguised. And so once he healed all of that, all he wanted was monogamy. I mean, like, okay, so primarily primarily monogamy. His body still responded to desire, but like that was his commitment, and he was in alignment with it, and he was cautious and worried about the others. So like, I've started to look at that with myself. I don't really have any clear, powerful way of distinguishing it because I didn't do all the trainings and stuff that he did. But I look at like, anyway, that's a far larger conversation. I recommend that book. I'll never stop recommending that book. I think I gave you a free copy, actually.
You did?
Yeah, I still recommend it. But yeah, my relationship to sexuality and the way that my desires have changed, like it's, as of the past 7 months, it's a question of what's healthiest for me rather than what do I want. And then there's resistance because what do I want in the moment often doesn't fit what I believe and have judged based on feedback and experience to be healthy for me. So I think it's a good evolution.
Yeah, I really love you saying what's healthiest for me now, because, you know, like, so for me, for example, if I were to go backwards and say that I'm going to be into kink or into power dynamic play now, I would have assumed that it was unhealthy or coming from a mental illness or trying to heal some wound or something. And I had so much judgment about what it was. And then since I've been doing all this work around clearing out the judgment and getting real with what's true for me in this moment, and like bringing that question that you just said, like what's healthiest for me now, and having a lot of intentionality and saying, in this moment right now, the healthy thing for me, the thing that I'm getting a lot of joy out of and growth out of and pleasure out of, is this thing called power dynamic play with a couple of partners, right? And maybe 5 years from now, I'm not going to be doing that. And then if that's true, then okay, great. I have no judgment about what's healthy for me now and what's healthy for me then and later and such. So I just love you asking that question. And that's what I do with a lot of people is it's getting in the right relationship for your sexuality right now, which is not the same as anybody else's. And it's not going to stay stagnant because we're dynamic beings. So it's yeah, I mean, like one of the first steps that I take people through is supporting them on getting clear on their sexual purpose statement. And when I say their sexual purpose statement is what is your relationship to sexuality and what is it in service of?
Interesting. What would be an example, or what would be a process to lead somebody through to create?
Well, one of the processes is asking your subconscious through this exercise that I do, is asking your subconscious is, how do you relate to sex? And I take them through this really simple exercise, which is just start saying, sex is this, sex is this, sex is this. And you just start listing and like turning your brain off and just allowing to come through whatever's coming through. And what that does is that we get all that stuff that's hanging out here onto paper so we can actually look at it and say, so this is what's operating in the background. And this may be what's getting in the way. What you actually want in your life is you have these stories or assumptions or judgments or negative views about sexuality, which makes sense because of our culture. And I have compassion. It's like, yep, no wonder you have that. Look at our culture. So the first step that I take people through is, I mean, that's one exercise that I do. I have more, but it's getting clear on what's happening in the background, and is that supporting us? And if not, how to clear that out and putting in what is it that we want. And then eventually the process helps us get to that really empowered, clear state of what is my sexuality in service of in my life.
Fascinating. I love that. I love all of that. I love the idea of that.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my sexual purpose statement is, I choose sexuality as an expression of love to myself and others, and for me to tap into my pleasureful and radiant self.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's like a guidepost for you. If you're having an experience or about to embark upon one that doesn't resonate with or jive with or accord with that, you're able to be like, yeah, no.
Totally. Yeah. Is engaging with this person or with this.
Or maybe you're not even
Yeah, but you know, it's the same thing as like a company creating a mission statement and value statement.
Yeah.
Right? The same thing. It's like, is doing this type of business going to help our purpose? And so for me, it's like, yeah, it's a guidepost for me to check out. Like, if I want to engage with this man or engage with this activity or this party or something, is that in alignment with the way that I want to relate to sexuality in my life right now?
Mm.
And what's really fun about this is no one gets to answer that except for me.
Yeah.
It's not anybody else's business on whether that's in alignment with them or the society or whatever, right? It's I get to have sovereignty over if that works for me, as long as I'm not hurting anyone else, or as long as I'm not doing anything non-consensual with somebody else, right? I'm the authority, I'm the sovereign one, and I get to say what serves me and what doesn't.
That's beautiful. And I've got a counterpoint.
Great.
What would you say to those who contend that there is an objective quality to the functioning of sexuality? Meaning that if a man is not... So some people contend, based on the work of stuff like Napoleon Hill, where he talks about the mystery of sex transmutation, using your sexual energy, harnessing it for achievement out in the world, or David Dita, The Way of the Superior Man, like, you should be able to find intimacy in one relationship first, and if you're just chasing many women, like, it's probably a sign of like lack of maturity or something. There are different systems that judge a man for wanting to be with multiple women, that tell him, hey, you know, you're wasting your time, something's out of alignment, like the fact that you're in pursuit of these desires. And like, is there strong or weak reason to believe that there's any value or truth in these kinds of models of sexuality?
And when you say these kinds of models of sexuality, you're specifically referring to what you just said about David Data and the other one?
Yeah. Natural course and flow for sexuality and sexual energy, that if followed benefits the whole person, and if disobeyed or shirked will cause someone to be out of alignment and suffer in other areas of life.
I have constriction when you talk about those models, because
I know that was my experience of it all year, because I was being offered it by someone who was a strong subscriber to it and seems to be benefiting very powerfully from it. However, well, go ahead. I'm just trying to serve as devil's advocate, because there might be value to it.
There might be. I have constriction because what I'm hearing is someone saying, if you're doing this, that means this. And I don't think that anyone has, I honestly believe that someone doesn't have the authority to say that about somebody else. So that, I think that's where my constriction comes from, of like, oh, this is what this means. If you're wanting to do this, this, and this, that means that you're not going deep and blah, blah, blah. And so I just have constriction around that. I was going to say something else, but it's not coming to me. So the way that I work is I keep coming back to the person that I'm working with. And I'm saying, what is it that you're wanting to create in your life? And what are you doing in your life? And is that in alignment with what you're wanting to create? And that is not something that I could say, so this means, right? I can't definitively say something about everyone. Like, it doesn't work like that for me. And, you know, I could throw in some research, some science research that's talking about that they're finding, for example, some genes that are more connected to being polyamorous, right? That they're actually finding that there are some people who are biologically more prone to polyamory, and there are people that are more biologically prone to monogamy. So how can we say humans are like this when we have evidence like this?
Yeah. I agree with that. I like how for you it's kind of a matter of individual experience. creation, choice, intention.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you're not a slave to a nature that you have to obey. Yeah, I like that.
As long as you're not hurting someone else, and as long as you're being consensual, I'm not going to yuck someone else's yum or say, oh, you're doing this because this is where you're broken, or you're trying to heal this wound. Maybe, but is it working for you? No? Then let's change it. Is it working for you? Great. Yay!
Yeah, I know, right?
It's just really that simple. I'll say the thing that I bring to people the most is radical permission for people to feel what they're feeling, have the desires that they have, and explore whatever it is that they're wanting to explore in a safe way. We're just living in a culture where there's so much, don't do this, you should be like this, don't do that. It's like, that's my job. That's one of my jobs on the planet, is radical permission.
Yeah, it seems like, just philosophically speaking, the tendency towards objectivizing, like saying, here is the standard for sexuality, is the very thing that causes shame. Like, telling some monogamous marriage, one man, one woman, penis, vagina, sex, once every 2 years for the sake of making a baby is like what you should be doing. Like that anybody who has anything that varies from that to any degree on any level. And the same impulse exists in, you should use your sexual energy in this way in order to accomplish X, Y, and Z in the world. You should only transmute it. You should never have an orgasm that involves ejaculation. Like, it's that same thing. And in fact, my experiences of shame have personally come from those two poles. Like, on the one hand, discovering porn through channel 52 on my grandfather's cable box. Sorry, Grandpa, when I was in 8th grade. And like, he didn't actually have porn. It was like a channel that barely came through, and it was multicolored, and it was clearly not supposed to come through the cable box, but somehow it would for like 5 seconds, and then it would go away. And then I'd have to change back to see it again, which I did for like 30 minutes.
Hey, I have an announcement.
Sure.
My computer's going to die, so we need to wrap this up soon.
Wrap this up. Yeah. I'll just make this point and then hear your count, and then we'll finish. So I was ashamed because Catholicism told me there was something wrong with me having those desires and taking the actions that fit with the way my body responded to seeing naked women and men do things on a screen.
Yeah.
And then in the past year, I've had shame around use of, still porn, but porn coming from another angle, which is, hey, I crave the experience of a new woman right now. And I crave it right now, even though I'm harnessing and organizing and trying to control my sexual energy. And the experience of not being in control is what causes the shame now, not the actual act of it. Like the act of it, okay, that's fine, it happens, whatever. But like not feeling like I should be able to control it and at all times be in control of it, which, that's another notion that one could judge themselves by, could standardize and say, oh, I need to be ashamed because I didn't fit it. Right. So anyway, that's just my experience.
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
What was the last thing you said?
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts is getting clear on what is your guidepost. Getting clear on what is the most in service and alignment to you. And giving yourself permission to explore that, even if they're counterculture, or even if someone told you that you should experience orgasm like this, or you should like this, or you should be like this. It's like, check it out for yourself and drop all the shoulds from out there.
Yeah. One thing, my final thought on this is those who have more sex more often live happier, longer, more satisfied lives. This is a documented scientific fact. It's part of us. If we try to resist and ignore and avoid it, it comes back in style and strength and force. It's fun. It's enjoyable. It has so many beautiful, interesting, intricate meanings. It's a place to learn, a place to grow, a place to develop, a place to exchange, to communicate, to connect, to become intimate, experience the depths of what it means to be mystically engaged with the divine. I mean,
so good.
That's my pay-in to sex.
So good.
And if you guys or ladies want to learn more, we are having a 5-presenter workshop called Austin Life Empowered Workshop Series 4 at Guanyin Tea House, November 5th, starting at 11 a.m. Sign up soon, register as soon as possible. Get there a little bit early to register in person so you get some good seats. Beautiful, amazing, organic, delicious food and water, and free giveaways totaling at about $1,000 worth of coaching sessions from our lovely and amazing presenters.
Right.
So sign up at the below, bit.ly/ALENOV. Thank you for listening. HazelGrace, thank you for sharing all of what you share.
Awesome. Thank you so much.